Hi, I'm ChopperCharles, and this is my dirty garage. Today, I'm going to be working on my SSR Buccaneer, a 2017 SSR Buccaneer made by Italjet, imported by SSR. Designed by Italians, made in China. Funny enough, the Chinese make it more reliable than Italian bikes. Go figure. Today, I'm going to be replacing my clutch. I'm a big guy, and I found my clutch slipping a little bit lately, so I decided to go with the Barnett Kevlar clutch and heavy-duty upgraded springs. So, here we see my clutch cover. I've already removed the oil filter and oil filter cover, and I removed most of these bolts. These last few bolts here, some of them are longer than others. And so I've made this neat little template here by tracing a clutch cover gasket and using a hole punch. So I can put the bolts in where they belong. Now do note that the clutch cover gasket has some bigger holes. Those are for dowel pins. You don't need to actually make the holes bigger because, well, I did. And then I had to tape them up so that they'd fit in here and not fall out. Once you've got all the screws out, you're going to need to take a rubber mallet or a dead blow hammer and gently tap, tap, tap while pulling through this hole. Tap, 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 tap until it's loose. There's also, right here, there's a pry point where you can stick a screwdriver, and I like to balance it on this bolt instead of on the painted surface here, and very gently pry. Now you just want to get a crack like that, and you don't want to put a lot of force on it. You don't want to break anything. But you're going to be hitting this gently all the way around until it starts to make a noise, and then pull and start working it loose. Whatever you do, you don't want to get your screwdriver in on the gasket surface and pry, because that's going to damage it. So just gently pull this off. Now this has already been off before, but you can see the gasket material, it just kind of peels off real easy. It doesn't leave a lot of residue left. What it does leave, I would take just a little scraper. I've got one here in my multi-tool. And just gently scrape off anything that remains on. You want to get that nice and clean. You don't want to have any residue on here, but you also don't want to scrape it up and damage it in any way. There's a little bit there. And is there any on? There's none actually on the engine itself. I'm going to take a rag and make sure that there's no residue left in here. No gasket pieces, nothing. Now be careful when you're taking this apart. If you notice right here, there's an O-ring. Okay? That O-ring is essential. It fits right here into the oil pump, and it must be on here. If it is not, you will lose oil pressure, and you will damage your engine. Okay? Now, once those are all off, it's time to remove the clutch. Do not touch this center bolt here. These 4 bolts here retain the clutch and have the clutch springs under them. Hold on a second here. This side of the garage is somewhat clean now. It won't last, trust me on that. I'm just going to zip these off. There was no real need for me to do that, other than I just didn't want to sit here and have you watch me unscrew and stuff. Okay, so this is the clutch pressure plate, and this fits in here. There's a clutch push rod inside. We don't need to mess with any of that. Okay? And these are your clutch plates. Alright, now notice this plate here. I'll show you in a second here. Take all of this whole stack out. Okay? We'll wait for that to shut up. Or I'll just go kill it. Alright, now we have two different clutch plates here. This one on the left and this one on the right. The one on the right actually is thinner and it has less friction material. There's only one of these, and it sits at the very front of the clutch pack against the pressure plate. And then there's 4 of these. Now the reason they didn't use all these big plates is because they wanted to have a light clutch pull on this bike. This is the same way the Virago did it. You need more clamping force, heavier springs for more friction material. Now I'm going to measure these here. I haven't measured these yet. I don't know what I'm going to see. But the recommended width on this is 0.11, and this is 0.119, and these are 0.1. And this is 0.119. So these are still within the service specifications. They can still be used. They're still good. I think the reason they were slipping is because I'm a big guy and the clutch springs are really ridiculously weak. Look at these. I can take this in my hand and squeeze it quite a bit and drop it, but I can actually press it down. I can see if I can get this down here so you can see. I can actually completely compress this spring with just my hand. These are the Barnett springs, upgraded springs. And the part number there, 50157040046. They're actually significantly shorter, but they're actually a thicker gauge material. They're impossible to squeeze in any kind of way by hand. And if you clamp them down in a vise, they are the same. Once they're fully compressed, they're the same height, and that's what matters. You wouldn't, for these to be the same height unsprung, this would be thicker than this is, and it would bind up the clutch. Okay, so we're going to actually throw away all of the stock parts here. We're not going to use any of these. We're going to use, these metal plates from Barnett. This is a steel plate. We're going to use one of these friction plates, the big friction plate, and 4 of the B plates, the smaller friction plates. And your friction plates should soak in a clean oil bath overnight. So I have this right here. All of these friction plates have been soaking overnight. I'm going to pull these out here. And I should have brought a rag because I'm going to make a nice big mess through the garage. But it's my dirty garage, so I can do that. Okay. I hope you can all see that well. Now, the first thing to notice on these is they have an edge. There's a sharper edge and a rounder edge. It doesn't matter what direction you put them in, but they should all match. So I'm going to put these in with the sharper edge first. And, oh, I almost screwed up. This is the big plate. The little plates here, you can slide in one little plate. And then here's the metal plate. Now these also have a round edge. I couldn't really tell from the stock plates which one went in what way because these don't actually have a round side or a flat side. But these did, and the rounded side went in first. So I'm going to duplicate that with these Barnett plates. Get these all lined up here and slide on in. Then another of the thin clutch plates put in the same way. And you can tell it has an edge. If you look here, these sides are rounded and these sides are sharp. Now I'm leaving the sharp on the outside here. Another one here. Another steel plate. The last friction plate, the last friction B plate at least. And now if you'll see how thick that B plate is compared to this, where it takes up the entire space. Whereas this one here, oops, they like to stick together, that's good. For a clutch at least. See how there's a gap between this tooth and the beginning of the friction material. And this is a wider friction material. Let's put this in here, and we've got the last clutch plate. Okay. Now we just slide this on. Okay. Take 4 of these new springs, pop them in. Now this is going to be a much stronger clutch pull than stock. And you may want, if you're not the strongest in the world, you don't want a lot of that, you can fit 2 OEM springs and across from each other and then 2 Barnett. You don't want to do it like this because that'll put uneven wear on the clutch. You'd want to have it like this if you're going to do that. I am just going to go with 4 because I am a strong man. I have muscles of steel. Alright, now I'm double checking here, making sure that O-ring is still in place. If you want, it's probably a good idea to just go ahead and order one of those, so you have a fresh one to put in. I did not know it existed before I took it apart because SSR doesn't publish a service manual, and honestly, I didn't read the Yamaha manual, which actually works really well for this bike, the XV250 service manual. Alright, that's in place. Now I'm going to meander back in here. So, I'm going to take each of these bolts here and put just a dash of blue Loctite on them. This is the removable stuff. You don't want to put the red on it. You'll never get it out, except with heat. I'm doing this not because it's required, but because in my Honda V4 I had some bolts back out, similar to this. And I don't want to leave that as a possibility with this motor. And oh, I'm going to save you the noise. Tighten this up here. Well, obviously I've forgotten something here because this isn't working correctly. There's a big gap there. So let's pull this apart and see what that's about. Let's see what's going on in here. And that definitely goes there. 5 plates. Ah, I see. These teeth need to fit into here. So there's a particular way that this fits on. There. See that? So if it's up, it's wrong. You cannot get this sucker here. Let's see if you can see it. You cannot get that flush. That's because you have to rotate this until you find the position where if you wiggle it, it'll sit flush. There. Like that. See? Nice and flush. And I'm wondering, there's not a mark there, but if you look at this HX1 right here, oops, you can't see. See that HX1? On mine at least, if that's at the bottom, in the bottom right there, there's an arrow right here, and an HX1 down here. So on my bike, and it might be true for all of them, that is the point at where this fits correctly. Okay, so I'll put these back in, and all that Loctite came off, so I'll put these back on. Don't need a lot, just a dash, just to keep them from backing out. And in the future, an impact will take these off with blue Loctite on them. You won't need any heat or anything. Notice now the whole thing's not spinning on me. As I'm screwing this in, the clutch pack is having resistance and is keeping things from rotating. Now, there are probably torque specs in the manual, and I should probably get out a torque wrench and do it correctly. But with this small ratchet and a 10 millimeter, I'm not going to be able to over torque this. So I'm just going to tighten these snug by hand, because these were not very tight when I removed it. There, we have a clutch. It is now in the bike. And I've removed all the gasket material here. And I'm just going to clean it up a bit. It's going to drip oil all over your exhaust, so you might want to clean that up after you're done too. My bike is currently filthy, just like my dirty garage. Shameless plug. Okay. Here is my fresh and pretty gasket. Now I'm going to attach this gasket without any kind of sealant. You can use sealant. I don't really like using sealant. Sometimes I'll put sealant on one side of a gasket so that it'll stay attached to one, like have it stay attached to the cover, and then put grease on the other side so it doesn't stay attached to the motor, or vice versa. Honestly, these SSR gaskets are so cheap and they come off so cleanly when they're not applied with anything that I really like that. And if you see, they're a high quality gasket. They have this little bead of silicone sealant in it around all the bolt holes to keep it from leaking. I think that's a nice touch. Now I'm going to put it on the clutch cover because there are these two dowel pins here that will retain it. So I just set it on like that. Okay? Yeah. Okay. And then I'm just going to ever so gently fit the clutch cover back onto the motor. I just felt something slip. Double checking that this O-ring right here stays in place. It is vitally important. Okay, and then just gently wobble it on. And then come back over here to your beautiful, just beautiful little cardboard template here. And just start pulling out some bolts and putting them in holes. Don't snug anything up, just get them a few turns in. I'm going to show you something important in a minute. And if you feel anything start to cross thread, immediately stop and back out. I've not had any engine bolts go in wonky on the motor, but I occasionally do in the frame. It's interesting because the motor has these bolts. They're stainless steel but not polished. Most of the frame of the bike has these. They're polished. And the threads on the polished ones tend to also get polished, and so they sometimes will cross thread. But not into the motor. The motor has stainless steel bolts that are not polished. Okay, now I've got this bracket here. I'll take these two bolts out with their washers. Just set them aside. And, you know, that's a really bad place to set that, because I could just knock it and it would fall in there and I'd have to take it all out again. So I'm going to put it down here. Okay, and this sits here. Get these in evenly so that it doesn't jam up. Okay, now all of the bolts are going to go in except for this one. Alright, now to tighten this, get everything just snug. Not tight at all, just stop when it stops. And do a visual inspection. Make sure that the gasket looks good. There are no areas where it's pinched or missing. Yeah, it looks good all the way around. Now, we're going to start at the upper right-hand corner and tighten about a quarter turn. And then we're going to move down to the lower left corner, tighten about a quarter turn. Then we're going to move to the lower right corner, tighten a quarter turn, upper right, quarter turn. Now we've done an X. Now we're going to continue that X down to the bottom here, down to up to the top here. Oh, I already did that one, the top here. Then we're going to go over here, quarter turn. There's nothing back up there, so we'll quarter turn this one and finish with this. We just want to have more or less even clamping force on everything. And once that's there, go and just snug them up in the same pattern, maybe another eighth of a turn. And once you've got, you can just go at this point one after the other to make sure that they're all nice and tight. Okay, and now we're going to take this little clutch bracket here, clutch cable bracket, and this goes on the outside. I'll fit a screw in. This is actually a little bit difficult to start, but easy to drop. It's going to be easier to start this way. That's started. Now I'm just going to snug it a little bit, but not snug enough that this can't move. I can still move this by hand. Then I am going to put the other one in here. Actually, I'm going to back this off just a tiny turn. And notice when I'm snugging all of these bolts, all the clutch bolts here, these are really small. I'm holding this like this, and then I'm putting torque on it. if you hold it out any further, you're going to put too much torque. So you want to have basically these two fingers around here and just turn until you can't anymore. And that's going to be about the right torque for these bolts. Okay? And now we're going to install a brand new Yamaha oil filter. This is for the 250 Virago or the V-Star 250 or whatever. It's a nice little filter. Now we're going to just put in the open end in and the sealed end here. Okay, just going to push it a little bit. It's not going to stay. Now you got these three hole tabs here. They fit into that hole. So you can do it either way. Put it in first. I like to put it in first and get that. Make sure that that internal part is centered. Okay. Now there's going to be a gap, and it's all going to squish together when you tighten it down. So I'm going to get my last 3 bolts that I've left in here for this cover. And you know, I'm going to say something, this is a little premature perhaps. What you should do now, really, is walk around up here and engage your clutch a couple of times and see, is that going to be too strong for you? I don't find this to be too strong for me at all. It's definitely more so than original, but I'm not having a problem with it at all. Now, one thing I just did notice here, when everything was apart, this little clutch cable here came out of its housing. So see how it is right there? That is not right. You see from this side, and you might be able to see that there's a hole in there. So let's get that straightened out before I do anything else. There. See, you want that to be in there straight and correct. I actually need to adjust that before I can tell. Let's get some cable play in there. In theory, you want to set this up so that it will just hold a quarter. And back it out until the tiniest touch of the lever drops the quarter. And that's the right amount of free play. Okay. Oh yeah, that's a much stiffer clutch than I had on it before, but I don't find it too stiff. I think it's probably too stiff for a girl, maybe. Not to be sexist, a lot of them love the light. A lot of people, not just women, a lot of people love a light pull clutch. And I'm not one of them. I would rather it be a little beefy so that I know that it can hold me around. Because I think the whole reason this clutch was slipping in the first place was because the springs are too light. If you're buying this bike and you just want to go ahead and do some preemptive maintenance, you can keep your stock plates and just replace all 4 clutch springs. I mean, this here, I think it was $13. It might have been $17, but it's not expensive. Now when you tighten this up, again, slowly snug it in stages. Okay, and don't snug these quite as tight as the case bolts. Alright. Now all we need to do is put oil in it and take it for a test drive. And we're done. In fact, you can actually lean this over on its side, do all of this work, and not lose a drop of oil. But it was time for me for an oil change anyways, and a filter change. So I went ahead and did it that way. Also note that there is another adjuster down here if you run out of adjustment on the handlebar. And that is replacing a clutch on a 2017 SSR Buccaneer 250. And this has been Chopper Charles and his dirty garage. Signing off.